Ladies and gentlemen, I know what it feels like to want something so badly that your chest aches with it. I know what it is like to lie, awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering why the thing you desire most seems to hover just beyond your reach, taunting you, teasing you, never quite arriving. I know what it is like to do everything right, or at least everything you have been told is right. To visualize, to affirm, to believe with all your might and still wake up in the same unwanted circumstance. I know what it is like to feel as though God Himself has forgotten you, as though the universe has placed you on some cosmic waiting list and lost your name. But I am here to tell you tonight that He has not forgotten you. You have not failed. You have simply been doing too much. You have been trying to lift with your arms what can only be lifted by your assumption. And assumption, my friend, is not a battle, it is a surrender. A sweet, sleepy surrender into the arms of the Father within you. Let me show you how to stop trying and start being. Let me give you permission, perhaps for the first time in your life, to receive. You see, the world has taught you a great lie. It has dressed this lie in the clothing of virtue, wrapped it in the language of hard work and discipline, and handed it to you as though it were a gift. The lie is this, that you must earn your good, that desire must be pursued, that the distance between where you are now and where you want to be must be bridged by labor, by sweat, by relentless effort. And so you have spent your years chasing. You have read the books. You have attended the seminars. You have created vision boards covered in images of the life you crave. You have stood before mirrors and repeated affirmations until your voice grew. You have tried to raise your vibration, whatever that means. You have done everything the teachers told you to do. And yet here you are, still wanting, still waiting, still wondering what you are doing wrong. I want you to hear me now and hear me clearly. You are not doing anything wrong. You are simply doing too much. The very effort you are expending is an announcement to the universe that you do not have what you seek. Every time you strain toward your desire, you declare its absence. Every time you work to make something happen, you confess that it has not yet happened. This is the great paradox that the world does not understand. Effort is a confession of lack, and the universe, which operates by laws far subtler than the world teaches, does not respond to your labor. It responds to your state. It mirrors back to you with perfect fidelity that which you have assumed to be true about yourself. Tonight I'm going to share with you what I call the effortless way. This is not laziness as the world understands laziness. This is not sloth or avoidance or the shirking of responsibility. This is something far more radical, far more powerful, far more aligned with the very fabric of creation itself. There is a principle in physics called least action. It governs the path of every planet in its orbit, every pulse of light traveling through space, every movement in the entire cosmos. The universe itself refuses unnecessary effort. It always finds the shortest path, the minimum expenditure of energy. And this same principle applies to consciousness to move from your present state to the state of your desire. You do not need to struggle. You do not need to strain. You need only assume. An assumption, rightly understood, requires nothing but a controlled imagination and a willingness to fall asleep in a new world. What I am about to share with you will not merely change your circumstances. It will change you. It will dissolve the false self that has been striving and struggling, and replace it with the true self that simply knows. And when you truly know that your desire is already accomplished in the unseen, you will understand why the wise have always said that faith is the evidence of things not seen. You will understand why the scriptures declare that before you call, I will answer. You will understand why creation is described as finished from the foundation of the world. Everything you could ever want already exists. It exists right now in this very moment in a state waiting for you to enter it. Your only task is to select, and selection requires no effort, only attention, only feeling, only the gentle willingness to rest in a new assumption and let it become real. Let me tell you what you will gain from staying with me tonight. You will learn how to use the sleepy state between waking and sleeping, that delicious twilight zone of consciousness, to implant your desires directly into your subconscious mind. You will discover why persistence, not intensity, is the true secret of assumption. You will understand how your inner speech, those silent conversations you carry on with yourself throughout the day, has been creating your circumstances, and you will learn how to change it. Tonight, you will be given the most radical tool in all of creation, something I call revision, which allows you to actually rewrite your past so that it no longer dictates your future. And most importantly, you will feel the profound relief of knowing that you are allowed to rest, that doing less is doing more, that the Father, within you, your own wonderful human imagination, does the work while you sleep. Forget everything you have heard about hustle culture and grinding your way to success. Forget the affirmations you shout without believing. Forget the vision boards you stare at with desperation rather than satisfaction. Forget the idea that you must force your mind into submission through sheer willpower. That is violence against your own soul. The law of assumption works by acceptance, not coercion. And acceptance is the gentlest act in the universe. Tonight you stop working. Tonight you start living in the end. Let me tell you a somewhere. Let me tell you a story that will begin to make this real for you. In the spring of 1943, a young man was drafted into the army and stationed at a large camp in Louisiana. He was intensely eager to get out of the army, but only in an entirely honorable way. The only path available to him was to apply for a discharge, and such an application required the approval of his commanding officer to become effective. According to Army regulations, the decision of the commanding officer was final and could not be appealed to any higher authority, military or civilian. So this soldier, following all the necessary procedures, submitted his application for discharge. Within 4 hours it was returned to him. Stamped across it in bold letters was a single word: disapproved. Now most men in his position would have accepted this as the final word. The commanding officer had spoken. There was no avenue of appeal. The facts were the facts. But this soldier knew something that most men do not know. He understood that his consciousness was the only reality. He understood that the conditions and circumstances of his life were not causes but effects, reflections of the state with which he was fused. And so he did something remarkable. He turned within. He decided to rely not on external authority, not on appeals or arguments or petitions, but on the law of assumption. That night, in interval between getting to bed and falling asleep, he concentrated his imagination on one simple feeling, the feeling of being a free man. He did not imagine the process by which he would be freed. He did not visualize confronting his commanding officer. He did not picture some miraculous change of heart. He simply felt what he would feel if the discharge had already been granted. He felt the relief. He felt the satisfaction. He felt the naturalness of being a civilian again. And with that feeling alive in him, he fell asleep. He did this night after night. Nothing happened for a while. The outer world showed no sign of change. But he persisted. He kept falling asleep in the assumption of the wish fulfilled. And then something extraordinary occurred. The commanding officer, whose decision was supposed to be final, whose word could not be overturned, inexplicably reversed his ruling. The soldier was granted an honorable discharge. No external pressure had been applied. No appeals had been made. No new evidence had been presented. The only thing that changed was the soldier's inner assumption. And when the inner assumption changed, the outer world had no choice but to conform. Now, what happened to that commanding officer? Did he know why he changed his mind? He did not. He probably believed that he had simply reconsidered the matter, that some new perspective had occurred to him, that the decision was entirely his own. But you and I know better. We know that the soldier's assumption cast a kind of spell on the officer's mind, not through any mystical manipulation, but through the simple operation of the law. Consciousness is the only reality. And when one man's consciousness changes, the world around him must change to reflect it. The people in your life are not independent agents acting according to their own arbitrary wills. They are reflections of your assumptions about them. They echo back to you. You have whispered to them in the secret chamber of your own mind. This is either the most liberating truth you have ever heard or the most terrifying. It is liberating because it means you are not at the mercy of external forces. No person, no institution, no circumstance has any power over you except the power your own assumptions give it. You are the sole creator of your experience. But it is also terrifying, at least at first. It means you can no longer blame anyone else. You cannot point to the economy or the government or your parents or your past and say, "This is why my life is the way it is." No. Your life is the way it is because the assumptions you have held consciously or unconsciously about yourself and your world. The good news is that assumptions can be changed, and when they change, everything changes. Let me tell you another story. A costume designer once came to me frustrated and angry about her employer, a prominent theatrical producer. She described him as rude, unfair, and dismissive of her best work. She was convinced that he deliberately criticized her and rejected her designs out of spite. Upon hearing her story, I explained something that she did not want to hear. I told her that if she found the other man rude and unfair, it was a sure sign that she herself was wanting, that it was not the producer, but herself who was in need of a new attitude. She was taken aback by this, as most people are when they first encounter this truth. We all want to believe that our problems are caused by others, that if only they would change, our lives would be better. But this is the great illusion. I asked her what conversation she having with this producer in her mind. She looked puzzled at first, but then she confessed. Every morning on her way to the theater, she told him exactly what she thought of him. She rehearsed arguments. She cataloged his faults. She imagined confrontations in which she finally said all the things she was too afraid to say aloud. Her inner speech was filled with criticism and recrimination. I told her that this was the cause of her trouble. Others only echo that which we whisper to them in secret. The producer was not the source of her problem. He was merely a mirror reflecting back to her the assumption she held about him. I suggested that she change her inner conversations. Instead of mentally arguing with him, she would imagine him praising her work. Instead of rehearsing his faults, she would hear him saying kind things before going to sleep each night and at intervals throughout the day. She would imagine that he had congratulated her on her fine designs and that she in turn had thanked him for his praise and kindness. She agreed to try it. Within a few weeks, something remarkable happened. The producer's behavior reversed itself completely. He began praising her work. He treated her with respect and kindness. Nothing about him had changed. Nothing about his personality or his character or his external circumstances. The only thing that changed was her assumption of him. And when her assumption changed, he had no choice but to change. He was merely bearing witness, as he always had been, to her concept of him. Do you see what this means? You are walking through life surrounded by mirrors. Every person you meet, every circumstance you encounter, every event that unfolds is a reflection of something within you. This is not a punishment. It is not a curse. It is the most magnificent gift imaginable because it means that you have complete creative control over your experience. You do not need to manipulate others. You do not need to change external conditions. You do not need to force or coerce or persuade. You simply need to change your assumption, and the world will rearrange itself to match. But here is where most people stumble. They hear this teaching, and they try to apply it through effort. They strain to hold positive thoughts. They fight against their doubts. They engage in a kind of mental warfare, trying to beat their negative assumptions into submission. And then they wonder why it does not work. It does not work because effort is the opposite of assumption. Assumption is acceptance. It is surrender. It is falling into a new state. The way you fall into sleep gently, naturally, without struggle, the moment you try hard, you have already failed. Because trying implies that the thing is not yet done. And the law responds not to your effort, but to your state. Let me give you a picture that may help you understand this. Imagine that you walk into a motion picture theater, just as the feature film reaches its happy ending. The hero has triumphed. The lovers are reunited. The fortune is restored. You see the final scene and you feel satisfied. But because you want to see the whole story, you wait for the film to begin again. Now you watch from the beginning. You see the hero falsely accused, surrounded by enemies drowning in tragedy. Others in the audience weep, they gasp. They grip their seats in anxiety. But not you. You remain calm. Why? Because you have already witnessed the end. You know how it turns out. No matter how dark the middle of the story becomes, you sit in perfect peace because you have seen the conclusion. This is how you are to live. Go to the end of your desire now. Not tomorrow, not next week, not when circumstances improve. Now witness the happy conclusion in your imagination. Feel what you would feel if it were already so. And then when the outer world shows you scenes of conflict or lack or delay, you will remain unmoved. You will not be shaken by appearances because you know the ending. You have already lived it in your imagination. The picture must unfold toward what you have witnessed within. This is not denial of facts. This is faith in the deeper fact. The fact that imagination is the only reality, and that what is imagined and felt as real must come to pass. Now I want to go deeper in mechanics of how this works. Because understanding the principle is not enough. You must also know how to apply it, and the application is so simple, so effortless that most people overlook it entirely. They are looking for something difficult, something that requires great skill or discipline. But the truth is that the most powerful creative act you can perform requires nothing but a willingness to feel and a willingness to sleep. There is a state of consciousness that you pass through every single night. It is the twilight zone between waking and sleeping, the borderland where the conscious grip begins to relax its grip and the subconscious opens wide to receive impression. In this state, you are neither fully awake nor fully asleep. You are aware, but you have lost the desire to move. You could open your eyes, but you feel no inclination to do so. This is the most receptive state of consciousness possible, and most people waste it entirely. They fall into it by accident, carrying with them whatever random thoughts and feelings happen to be occupying their minds, and then they wonder why their lives seem to unfold in random, uncontrolled ways. But the wise use this state intentionally. They enter it with purpose, and they plant in the fertile soil of the subconscious the seeds of the life they wish to grow. Your subconscious mind is the creative power within you. It is the Father that Jesus spoke of when he said, "I and my Father are one, and the Father that dwelleth in me, he doth the works." Your conscious mind, with all its reasoning and analyzing and play, not create anything. It can only select. It can only choose the state. But the subconscious takes whatever state is impressed upon it and brings it to pass through. Means you cannot consciously devise. It works in the darkness beneath the threshold of your awareness, weaving together circumstances and events and people to manifest what you have assumed to be true. The way to impress the subconscious is through feeling, not emotion necessarily, but the sensation of reality. When you imagine something and you feel it to be real, you are impressing the subconscious. And the subconscious, like a faithful servant, goes to work immediately to externalize what you have impressed upon it. The problem is that most people impress this unconscious unconsciously. They go through their days feeling worried, feeling inadequate, feeling lacking. And these feelings are seeds planted in the creative soil. The subconscious does not judge. It does not say this feeling is good, so I will manifest it, or this feeling is bad, so I will reject it. It accepts everything you give it and brings it to pass without discrimination. This is why Jesus said, "As you sow, so shall you reap." He was not speaking of physical seeds or physical harvests. He was speaking of mental seeds, of assumptions. You have the feelings you carry with you into sleep. Whatever you have in consciousness as you go to sleep is the measure of your expression in the waking world. Nothing stops you from realizing your objective except your failure to feel that you are already that which you wish to be, or that you are already in possession of the thing sought. Your subconscious gives form to your desires only when you feel your wish fulfilled. Let me teach you the technique. It is so simple that a child could do it. In fact, children do it naturally before the world teaches them to doubt. Lie down in your bed, close your eyes. Let your body relax and say to yourself inwardly, I am sleepy, so very sleepy. Let a faraway feeling envelope you. Feel the heaviness in your limbs. Feel the pleasant latitude that comes when you are about to drift off. You will know you are in the right state when you feel a comfortable indifference to movement, when you could move but have no desire to do so. Now in this drowsy state, bring to mind a single scene that implies your wish fulfilled. Not the process by which the wish is fulfilled, not the steps that lead up to it, just the end, the conclusion. The moment that would only exist if your desire were already realized. If you want a new own, feel the doorknob of your own front door beneath your hand as you enter your house. If you want a loving relationship, hear a friend saying to you, I have never seen you so happy. If you want financial abundance, see the balance in your bank account. Feel the satisfaction of having more than enough. Choose one simple scene, one sensory impression that implies the end. And here is the crucial part. You must not see this scene as though you were watching a movie. You must be in it. You must see from your own eyes, not see yourself from the outside. If you can see your own face in the scene, you are watching it, not living it. Get inside. Be the one who is experiencing it. Feel the textures beneath your fingers. Hear the sounds around you. Smell the air. Make it as vivid and real as you can. And above all, feel the naturalness of it. Feel as though it is already true. Feel as though this is simply how things are. Then repeat this scene. Let it loop gently in your imagination. Do not strain. Do not force. If your mind wanders, simply return to the scene without judgment. It is the frequency of return, not the intensity of concentration, that makes the assumption natural. The more often you occupy this state of the wish fulfilled, the more natural it becomes. And what is natural must manifest. What is natural cannot fail to express itself. Then when the scene feels solid, when it feels as real as any memory, let it go. Release it. Stop trying to hold on to it. Simply drift into sleep with the feeling still alive in you. And trust. Trust the deeper self, the subconscious, the Father within to work out everything you have not consciously imagined. You have given it the end. It will devise the means. You have planted the seed. It will produce the harvest. Your job is done. This is why I call it the lazy way. Because once you have assumed the feeling of the wish fulfilled and fallen, asleep in that assumption, there is nothing more for you to do. You do not need to figure out how it will happen. You do not need to manipulate circumstances or people. You do not need to take action, at least not forced action. You may find yourself moved to act, but it will be inspired action. Action that flows naturally from your new state. It will not feel like effort. It will feel like the most obvious thing in the world. Let me tell you why this works. It works because creation is finished. This is one of the most radical truths I can share with you. Everything that could ever exist already exists. Every possible state you could ever occupy is already complete, already formed, waiting for you in the infinite mansion of consciousness. The world of creation is not something you build. It is something you select. Your consciousness is like a radio dial and reality is like an infinite spectrum of stations all broadcasting simultaneously. When you change your state, you are not creating a new reality. You are tuning into a different station, one that was always there, but that you were not receiving because you were tuned elsewhere. I once had an experience that made this truth vivid to me in a way that words cannot fully convey. One day, I slipped from my physical body in New York City and found myself in the dining room of an old inn somewhere in the distant past. I was fully awake, fully aware. I knew that my flesh lay still on my bed in the city. Yet here I was, as conscious as I have ever been, standing in this ancient place. And then I did something I had never done before. I stopped the activity of my mind. I felt my head tighten, then thicken to a stillness. My attention concentrated into a crystal clear focus. And at that moment, the waitress who had been walking across the room stopped in mid-stride. She did not freeze awkwardly. She simply walked not. The leaves outside the window, which had been falling from the trees, fell not. The family at a nearby table who had been lifting food to their mouths lifted it not. Everything froze. Then I relaxed my attention. The tightness eased and suddenly everything moved again. The waitress continued walking. The leaves continued falling. The family continued eating. In that moment, I understood something that changed my understanding forever. Creation is finished. All states, all moments, all possibilities already exist as complete realities. What we call time is simply our movement of attention through these frozen states, these sculptures of eternity. We are not creating anything. We are selecting. We are activating. We are bringing into our experience that which already exists in the infinite storehouse of consciousness. This is why assumption works. When you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you are not trying to create something out of nothing. You are tuning into a state that already exists. You are shifting your consciousness from one station to another. And because all states are equally real, equally complete, equally available, there is no effort required to make the shift. You simply assume. And the assumption carries you across the bridge from here to there, as gently as sleep carries from waking to dreaming. But now I want to address something that may be troubling you. You may be thinking, this all sounds wonderful, but what about my inner dialogue? What about all the negative thoughts that run through my mind constantly? How can I assume the wish fulfilled when my mind is filled with doubt and fear and worry? This is a crucial question, and the answer may surprise you. Your inner speech, those mental conversations you carry on with yourself throughout the day, is the most powerful creative force you possess. Most people are completely unaware of their inner speech. It runs on automatic, like background music that you have stopped noticing. But it is not background music. It is the script you are writing for your life. Every inner word, every silent sentence, every imagined conversation is shaping your tomorrow. The scripture says, "In the beginning was the Word." This is not merely a theological statement. It is a psychological and metaphysical truth. Your word, your inner speech is creative. It brings forth into match, it declares. Observe your inner talking right now. What are you saying to yourself? What conversations are running through your mind? If you are honest, you will probably notice that much of your inner speech is negative, doubtful, worried. You argue with people who are not there. You rehearse worst-case scenarios. You tell yourself stories of failure and rejection. And then you wonder why your outer life reflects failure and rejection. But how could it be otherwise? Your outer world is your inner talking made visible. The circumstances of your life are the solidified echoes of your mental conversations. Here is the good news. You can change your inner speech. You can begin tonight. It does not require years of therapy or endless self-analysis. It simply requires attention and intention. Start by observing what you are saying to yourself. Do not try to stop negative thoughts. That only gives them more power. Simply notice them, become aware of them without judgment, and then gently, deliberately, begin to substitute a new inner speech. Construct a simple phrase or sentence that implies your wish fulfilled. It might be something as simple as, "Isn't it wonderful?" or "Thank you, Father." It might be a statement like, "I have a wonderful income," or "I am deeply loved." Choose something that feels right to you. Something that, if it were true, would imply that your desire has been realized. And then whenever you catch yourself in negative inner speech, simply shift to your new phrase. Say it inwardly. Repeat it. Let it loop in your mind. Do not try to believe it. Simply say it. The belief will come later. For now, just change the words. Over time, this new inner speech will begin to feel natural. At first, it may seem like a lie. That is normal. You are contradicting years of habitual thinking. But as you persist, the new phrase will take root. It will begin to feel like truth. And when it feels like truth, it must manifest as truth. Remember, the subconscious does not distinguish between fact and fiction. It responds to feeling. When your inner speech carries the feeling of fulfillment, the subconscious accepts it as real and begins to externalize it. There is a particular time when this practice is especially powerful. In the morning, when you first awaken before you have fully emerged from sleep, you are still in that receptive state where the subconscious is open. This is the perfect time to speak your new inner speech. Before you open your eyes, before you think about the day ahead, before you remember your problems, simply say your phrase. Isn't it wonderful? Thank you, Father. I am so grateful that this is done. Let this be the first thought of your day. Let it set the tone for everything that follows. And at night before you sleep, let it be the last thought as well. Fall asleep in the feeling of the wish fulfilled with your new inner speech, humming gently in your mind. This creates a kind of bookend effect. Your day begins and ends with the assumption of success, and everything between is held within that assumption like a child held safely in a parent's arms. Now I want to share with you something that may seem even more radical than what I have said so far. I want to teach you how to change your past. Most people believe that the past is fixed, immutable, carved in stone. What happened, and there is nothing you can do about it. But this is not true. Your past is not a collection of facts. It is a collection of memories. And memories are not recordings of events. They are interpretations, reconstructions, stories you tell yourself about what happened. And if your past is a story, then it can be revised. It can be rewritten. It can be changed. I call this technique revision. It is the practice of mentally reliving events as you wish they had happened. Revising the scenes to conform to your ideal. This is not denial. It is not pretending that bad things did not happen. It is recognizing that the bad things are still affecting you because you are still carrying them in your consciousness, and that by revising them, you can release their hold on you and change their influence on your present and future. Let me tell you how it works. Before you go to sleep at night, review the events of the day. If something happened that you did not want, something that disturbed or disappointed you, do not accept it as final. Take that scene and rewrite it in your imagination. See it unfolding differently. Hear different words being spoken. Feel a different outcome. Make the revised scene as vivid as the original. Loop it. Repeat it. Let it overwrite the original memory in your mind. For instance, suppose you had an argument with someone today. Perhaps harsh words were exchanged. Perhaps feelings were hurt. Do not go to sleep in that state. Revise the scene. Imagine that instead of arguing, you had a calm and loving conversation. Hear the other person speaking kindly to you. Feel the warmth of reconciliation. Let this revised scene be the one you take into sleep, and something remarkable will happen. The tension between you and that person will begin to dissolve. The relationship will begin to shift, not because you have manipulated them, but because you have changed the structure of yourself. And when your inner structure changes, your outer world must follow. Let me give you an even more powerful example. A woman once came to me who had suffered from back pain for nearly 40 years. The condition had become so severe that she was in almost constant medical treatment. The doctors could provide temporary relief, but the pain always returned. One night she heard me speak of revision and wondered if a condition of 40 years could be revised. She remembered the origin of her pain. When she was 3 or 4 years old, she had fallen backward from a very high swing and suffered a serious hip injury. From that time on, she had never been completely free from pain. So she decided to revise that ancient accident. Night after night, she imagined herself back on that swing. But in her revised scene, she did not fall backward. She jumped forward. She landed safely on her feet. She ran to her mother to show what she could do. She landed safely again. She repeated this revised scene over and over, night after night, until it felt as real as any memory. Within 2 days, the pain in her back and hip began to recede. Within 2 months, it was gone completely. A condition that had plagued her for nearly 40 years, that had cost a small fortune in medical treatment, was no more. Not because she had found a better doctor, not because she had discovered a new medication, but because she had revised her past. She had changed the structure of her own consciousness. And when that structure changed, her body had no choice but to change as well. This may seem impossible to you. The world does not teach us that we have such power. But I am telling you that you do. Your past is not a prison from which there is no escape. It is a story you have been telling yourself, and you can tell a different story. You can revise any memory, any event, any wound. And when you revise it in your imagination, when you feel the revision as real, you release its power over you. You are no longer a victim of circumstances. You are the author of your own experience. Now I want to bring all of this together for you in a practical way, because knowing is not enough. You must do, or rather you must be. Let me walk You through exactly what I want you to do tonight and every night from now on. First, clarify your desire. What do you want? Do not concern yourself with the means. Do not wonder how it will come to pass. That is not your business. Your only task is to know what you want and to define the end clearly. Ask yourself, if my wish were already fulfilled, what would I see? What would I hear? What would I feel? What scene would imply that the thing is done? Choose one moment, one simple scene that would only exist if your desire were realized. Make it specific. Make it sensory. Make it something you can step into with your imagination. Second, induce the drowsy state. Lie down comfortably. Close your eyes. Let your body relax slowly and deeply. Say to yourself, I am sleepy. So sleepy. So very sleepy. Let the feeling of drowsiness wash over you. Feel the heaviness in your limbs. Feel the pleasant indifference to movement. Do not try to stay alert. Let yourself drift towards sleep. But maintain just enough awareness to direct your imagination. This is the sweet spot, the borderland between waking and sleeping where the magic happens. Third, assume and feel. Now in this drowsy state, enact your chosen scene. Be in it, not watching it, but living it. See from your own eyes, feel the textures, hear the sounds, taste the air, and above all, feel the naturalness of it. Feel as though this is simply how things are. There is no longing in this feeling, no hoping, no wishing, only the quiet satisfaction of having. Let the scene loop gently. Repeat it without strain. If your mind wanders, return to the scene with kindness, not frustration. Do this until the scene feels solid, until it feels more real than the room you are lying in. Fourth, release and sleep. When the feeling is established, stop, let go. Stop trying to hold the scene. Simply drift into sleep with the feeling still alive in you. Trust that the work is done. Trust that the subconscious has received the impression. Trust that it will work out everything you have not consciously imagined. Your job is finished. Now rest. And if you to add an extra layer of power to this practice, do not go to sleep in the composite of the day's events. Before you assume your desire, revise the day. Go through the events that unfolded. If anything displeased you, rewrite it. See it ending differently. Feel the resolution. Make peace with the day. Clean the slate. And then from that place of clarity, assume your wish fulfilled and drift into sleep. Do this every night, every single night. Not because it takes a long time to work, but because frequency is the key to naturalness. The more often you occupy the state of the wish fulfilled, the more natural it becomes. And what is natural must express itself. What is natural cannot be resisted. The subconscious cannot help but externalize that which has become your habitual state. Some of you may be wondering how long this will take. You want a timeline. You want to know when you will see results. I understand this desire, but I must tell you that the question itself reveals a lack of true assumption. When you have truly assumed the wish fulfilled, you do not wonder when it will happen. You know it is done. You rest in the certainty of it. The timeline becomes irrelevant because in your consciousness the thing is already accomplished. That said, the time it takes for an assumption to manifest in the outer world is proportionate to the naturalness of being it. If you can assume something easily, if it does not stretch your belief too far, it will manifest quickly. If you are assuming something that feels almost impossible to you. It may take longer. Not because the law is slower, but because it takes longer for you to reach a state of true acceptance. The law works instantly. It is your acceptance that varies. So start where you are. If the thing you desire feels too far away, start with something smaller. Build your faith through experience. Prove to yourself that the law works by testing on things that are easy to believe. And as your faith grows, your capacity to assume greater things will grow with it. You will find that the more you use this law, the more natural it becomes. And one day, you will reach a point where assumption is your default state. You will no longer need techniques or practices. You will simply live from the end of your desires as naturally as you breathe. Let me speak now to those of you who have tried this before and feel that it did not work. You followed the instructions. You did the visualization. You fell asleep in the wish fulfilled, and yet the thing did not come. You woke up in the same circumstances, your faith was shaken. I understand. I have been there. But let me tell you what I have learned. If your assumption did not manifest, it is not because the law failed. The law cannot fail. An assumption, if persisted in, must harden into fact. This is as certain as the law of gravity. What varies is not the law, but your application of it. Perhaps you did not truly assume. Perhaps you fell asleep in hope rather than in having. Hope is directed toward the future. Having is present tense. There is a great difference. If you go to sleep, hoping for something, you are affirming that you do not yet have it. And the subconscious, which responds to your state, manifests accordingly. Or perhaps, you assumed correctly but did not persist. You did it once or twice or a few times, and then you gave up. You looked at the outer world and saw no change. And you let the appearances shake your faith. But appearances are effects of past assumptions. They are echoes of what you used to believe. They have no power to dictate what happens next. Only your current assumption has that power. If you had persisted, if you had kept falling asleep in the wish, fulfilled night after night, regardless of appearances, the outer world would have had no choice but to conform. Persistence is the key, not effort. Persistence. There is a difference. Effort is strain. Persistence is simply returning. You return to the state of the wish fulfilled again and again, not with force, but with faithfulness. You refuse to let appearances convince you that your assumption is false. You maintain your assumption as you would maintain a fire, gently feeding it, never letting it go out. And eventually, inevitably, the fire catches. The assumption hardens into fact. The inner becomes outer, and you see with your physical eyes what you first saw with your inner eye. I want to close by speaking directly to your heart. I know that some of you have been carrying heavy burdens for a long time. I know that some of you have almost given up hope. You have tried so many things, followed so many teachers, adopted so many practices, and still the life you desire seems far away. I want you to know that your struggle is not in vain. Everything you have been has brought you to this moment, and this moment is a doorway. Tonight you can walk through that doorway. Tonight you can lay down the burden of effort and pick up the gift of assumption. Tonight you can stop trying to become and simply be. The God within you, the I am that is your true identity, has been waiting patiently for you to realize who you are. You are not a worm groveling before a distant deity, begging for crumbs of blessing. You are the creator of your reality, made in the image and likeness of the infinite creative power. What you assume, you become. What you feel is real, you experience as fact. So tonight, when you close your eyes, I want you to remember this. You are not broken. You have simply been missiled. You have been taught to seek outside yourself for what can only be found within. You have been taught to struggle for what can only be received. You have been taught that effort is holy when in truth the holiest act is rest. Rest in the assumption that you are already what you desire to be. Rest in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Rest in the knowledge that the Father within does the work. And if you do this, if you fall asleep tonight in the assumption of your desire fulfilled, and the next night, and the night after that persisting, no matter what appearances may suggest, you will see a change. It may come suddenly or gradually. It may come through expected channels or unexpected ones, but it will come because the law is impersonal and unfailing. It responds to all who use it without exception. This is the lazy way. This is the effortless way. This is the only way that truly works. Not because doing nothing is easy, but because doing nothing is hard. It is hard to let go. It is hard to trust. It is hard to fall asleep in a new world when the old world is screaming at you to pay attention to it. But this difficulty is not labor. It is surrender. And surrender once achieved is the most restful thing in the universe. So I say to you now in the voice of the I Am within you, you are allowed to rest. You are allowed to receive. You are allowed to have everything you desire, not by earning it, but by assuming it. The kingdom of heaven is within you, and all that the Father has is yours. Tonight, claim your inheritance. Tonight, press play on the life that has always been waiting for you. Tonight, fall asleep in the wish, fulfilled, and let the Father within bring it to pass. It is finished. It always was. If something in what I have shared tonight spoke to you, if you felt a quiet knowing rise within you, then I want you to do something for me. Leave a comment below. Tell me what you are assuming tonight. Share this with someone who is still straining, still fighting, still wondering why the universe has not answered them. Let them know that there is a better way. And if you wish to continue walking this path with me, subscribe to this channel. There is more to come. Much more. The depths of this teaching are infinite, and I have only scratched the surface tonight. But for now, this is enough, more than enough. Go to sleep tonight in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. And trust that you have been heard. Trust that the work is done. Trust that the Father within who never sleeps is bringing your assumption to pass even as you rest. Good night, my friend. And thank you for staying with me. Your faith, your attention, your willingness to listen. These are gifts, and I do not take them lightly. Rest now. You have earned it, and more importantly, you have always been allowed. But before you go, let me tell you one more story. Let me share with you something that happened to a man who attended one of my lectures many years ago. He was broke, completely broke. Not just financially struggling, but genuinely without means. He had read my book on awakened imagination, had understood the principle of revision, and yet he confessed to me that he had done nothing with it to address his financial situation. He had simply read and nodded and continued living as he had always lived. That night, something changed in him. He decided to test the law. He decided to imagine himself as the winner of a betting pool at a local racetrack. Now, I want to be clear. I am not advocating gambling. What I am illustrating is the principle. He chose a specific measurable outcome and he assumed it to be true. Each night, he would fall asleep imagining that he was at the window collecting his winnings. He felt the money in his hands. He heard the clerk congratulating him. He felt the naturalness of having won. Weeks passed. He persisted, and then one day, against all statistical probability, he won. Not just a small amount, but a substantial sum, enough to change his circumstances entirely. Now the skeptic would call this coincidence. The skeptic would point to probability and say that someone had to win, and it happened to be him. But you and I know better. We know that nothing happens by coincidence. We know that imagination creates reality. We know that his persistent assumption maintained night after night in the drowsy state, tuned him to a frequency where winning was natural, was inevitable. Let me tell you about another man, a banker who felt trapped in his position. He worked for a large financial institution, but despite years of service, he had received no meaningful advancement. He went to his superiors and asked about his prospects. They were frank with him. They told him that any major improvement was impossible. They suggested that if he was dissatisfied, he could look elsewhere. This only intensified his frustration. When he came to me, he confessed that he did not desire great wealth. He simply wanted a substantial income to maintain his home comfortably and provide good education for his children. This modest goal seemed beyond his reach. What he truly longed for, he said, was a position managing investment funds for a large institution, a foundation perhaps, or a great university. I explained the law of assumption to him. I told him that his present situation was only a manifestation of his concept of himself, and that if he wanted to change his circumstances, he must first change his concept of himself. I suggested a specific practice. Each night just before falling asleep, he was to imagine that he was retiring at the end of one of the most important and successful days of his life. He was to feel that he had that very day closed a deal to exactly the kind of organization he yearned for in exactly the capacity he desired. He did this faithfully. Night after night through December and January, he fell asleep in the assumption that he had achieved his goal. He felt the contentment. He felt the relief. He felt the satisfaction of a fulfilled desire. Early in February, something remarkable happened. A director of one of the wealthiest foundations in the world contacted him out of the blue and asked if he would be interested in joining them in an executive capacity handling investments. After brief discussion, he accepted. His new position far exceeded any he had originally hoped for at a substantially higher income with the assurance of steady progress. How did this happen? The director did not know about this man's imagination exercises. He was not consciously responding to some mystical signal. And yet he was responding. He was responding to something he could not name. Some subtle shift in the fabric of things, some alteration in the pattern of probability. But you and I know what happened. The man's persistent assumption had rewritten the script. It had tuned him to a new frequency. It had made him visible to opportunities that had always existed, but that his former state could not perceive. This is what I mean when I say that consciousness is the only reality. Your outer world is not separate from you. It is an extension of you. It is your inner state, projected outward, solidified, made visible. When your inner state changes, the projection changes. New images appear on the screen of life. New characters enter your story. New opportunities present themselves, not because they were not there before, but because your former state could not see them. Let me go deeper into this idea of states, because I think it is one of the most misunderstood aspects of this teaching. When I speak of a state, I do not mean merely a mood or an emotion. I mean something far more fundamental. A state is a complete attitude of mind, a total configuration of beliefs and assumptions about yourself and your relationship to the world. You do not have a state, you are in a state. And you can move from state to state as easily you move from room to room in a house. Think of it this way. Imagine an enormous mansion with infinite rooms. Each room represents a different state of consciousness. In one room, you are wealthy. In another, you are poor. In one room, you are loved. In another, you are lonely. In one room, you are healthy and vibrant. In another, you are sick and weak. All of these rooms exist simultaneously. All of them are equally real. And you, the occupant of the mansion, can enter any room you choose. When you enter a room, everything in that room becomes your experience. If you enter the room of poverty, you will experience poverty. Not because you are being punished, not because you deserve it, simply because that is what that room contains. If you enter the room of abundance, you will experience abundance. Again, not because you have earned it, but because abundance is what that room contains. Most people do not realize that they have a choice about which room to occupy. They think they are stuck wherever they happen to be. They think that external circumstances determine which room they are in. But this is backwards. It is the room you occupy that determines your external circumstances. Change your room and your circumstances must change. This is the great secret that the world does not teach. And how do you change rooms? Not by action, not by struggle, not by trying to rearrange the furniture in your current room. You change rooms by assumption. You assume that you are in a different room. And by the law of assumption, you are transported there. The assumption is the vehicle. The feeling is the fuel, and the journey happens in an instant, though it may take time for the effects to become visible in the outer world. Let me address something that may be troubling some of you. You may be thinking, but what about action? Surely I cannot just lie in bed imagining things and expect my life to change. Surely I have to do something. This is a reasonable concern, and I want to address it clearly. I am not telling you never to act. I am not suggesting that you become passive and simply wait for things to happen. What I am telling you is that action without assumption is futile. It is rearranging deck chairs on a sinking ship. It is trying to change the reflection in a mirror by polishing the glass. The reflection can only change when the object standing before the mirror changes. Your circumstances are the reflection. Your assumptions are the object. When you change your assumptions, when you enter a new state of consciousness, action will flow naturally from that state. But it will not feel like effort. It will feel like the most obvious thing in the world. You will find yourself doing things that move you toward your goal, but you will not feel that you are forcing them. They will feel inspired, natural, inevitable. This is the difference between effortless action and labored action. Labored action comes from trying to change circumstances without first changing yourself. Effortless action comes from circumstances being pulled toward you because you have already changed within. Let me give you an example. Suppose you want a new job. The labored approach would be to desperately send out hundreds of resumes, to network frantically, to chase every lead with sweaty desperation. You might get results this way, but they will feel hard-won, exhausting, unsatisfying. The effortless approach would be to first assume the feeling of having the perfect job, to fall asleep each night in the satisfaction of meaningful work well compensated, to feel the naturalness of being employed exactly where you want to be. And then from that state, you would take action. But the action would be different. You might send out only a few resumes, but to exactly the right places. You might have a conversation that leads to an unexpected connection. You might receive a phone call out of the blue. The action is still there, but it is guided by the assumption. It is informed by the state. It feels like following breadcrumbs rather than hacking through jungle. This is what the scripture means when it says, "Not by might nor by power, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord." The Spirit is the feeling, the assumption, the state. The might and power are the labored efforts that the world teaches us to rely on. But the Spirit accomplishes what might and power cannot. It moves mountains without strain. It opens doors without force. It brings things to pass through ways we could never have consciously devised. Now I want to talk about something I touched on earlier but want to explore more deeply. I want to talk about the relationship between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, because understanding this relationship is essential to applying the law effectively. Your conscious mind is the captain of the ship. It is the part of you that thinks, reasons, analyzes, and makes decisions. It is the part of you that is reading these words or listening to this voice right now. It has the power to direct attention, to choose where to focus, to select the states you will occupy. But the conscious mind, for all its apparent power, cannot actually create anything. It can only select. Your subconscious mind is the ship itself, the crew, the engines, the navigation system. Everything that actually makes the ship go. It is the creative power within you. It is the Father that Jesus spoke of when he said, "The Father within does the works." The subconscious takes whatever assumption is impressed upon it and brings it to pass through means that the conscious mind could never devise. It works beneath the threshold of awareness in the darkness where seeds germinate, where embryos form, where all manifestation begins. The subconscious mind does not reason. It does not judge. It does not distinguish between what is good for you and what is bad for you, between what is true and what is false. It simply accepts whatever is impressed upon it and externalizes it faithfully. This is why your habitual thoughts and feelings are so important. They are constantly impressing the subconscious, constantly giving it instructions, constantly shaping your tomorrow. The interface between the conscious and subconscious minds is feeling. When you feel something, when you have a sense of reality about something, you are impressing the subconscious. The drowsy state I described earlier is so powerful precisely because it is the state where this interface is most open, most receptive. In that borderland between waking and sleeping, the conscious mind relaxes its habitual control and the subconscious opens wide to receive whatever you give it. This is why I insist on the feeling of the wish fulfilled, not just the thought of it. You can think about something all day long, whatever impressing the subconscious. But the moment you feel it as real, the moment you have a sense that it is actually, so the subconscious receives it. And once it is received, the subconscious goes to work. It begins to rearrange circumstances, to align events, to bring the inner assumption into outer expression. It does this with an intelligence and a resourcefulness that far exceeds anything the conscious mind could accomplish. Let me tell you something about prayer that may change how you understand it. Prayer, as the world teaches it, is begging. It is supplication to an external deity asking for favors that may or may not be granted according to some inscribable divine will. This is not prayer at all. This is a misunderstanding of the deepest kind. True prayer is not asking for what you want. True prayer is giving thanks for what you have. But what if you do not have it yet? Then you give thanks for having it before you have it. This is the prayer of faith. This is the prayer that moves mountains. You do not say, "Please God, give me this thing." You say, "Thank you, Father, that this is done." You assume the wish fulfilled, and you give thanks from that assumption, and the subconscious receiving this impression of gratitude for something already accomplished brings it to pass. This is why Jesus said, "When you pray, believe that you have received, and it shall be yours." Not believe that you will receive, not believe that you might receive. Believe that you have received, past tense, already done. This is the assumption of the wish breast in the form of prayer. It is not begging, it is accepting. It is not hoping, it is having. And from this state of having, gratitude flows naturally. And the gratitude impresses the subconscious, and the subconscious externalizes the impression, and the prayer is answered. Let me speak now about doubt, because I know that doubt is one of the greatest obstacles to applying this law effectively. You do the practice. You assume the wish fulfilled. You fall asleep in the feeling of having. And then you wake up in the morning and look around and see that nothing has changed. The old circumstances are still there. The old problems are still present. And doubt creeps in. You think, maybe this does not work. Maybe I did it wrong. Maybe I am an exception to the law. I want you to understand something about this doubt. It is natural. It is expected. It does not mean you have failed. Doubt arises because the conscious mind, which operates through the senses, sees only what is present. It sees the current circumstances and reports them to you as fact. But these circumstances are not facts in the way you think. They are echoes. They are the last frames of an old movie still playing on the screen, even though you have already changed the reel. When you assume a new state, when you fall asleep in the wish fulfilled, you have changed the reel. But the old movie does not instantly disappear. It takes time for the new movie to begin showing. During this interval, the old circumstances may persist. They may even seem to intensify. This is not evidence that the law has failed. It is simply the lag between the inner change and the outer manifestation. The bridge of incidents, as I sometimes call it, the series of events that will bring your Assumption to pass is being constructed, but it happens beneath the surface, out of sight. Your job during this interval is to persist, to keep falling asleep in the assumption of the wish fulfilled regardless of what the senses report. To refuse to let appearances shake your faith. This is not easy. I will not pretend that it is. The senses are persuasive. They shout at you while the imagination whispers. But you must train yourself to trust the whisper more than the shout. You must learn to turn away from what is and toward what shall be, knowing that what you assume will come to pass. Let me tell you how to handle doubt when it arises. Do not fight it. Do not try to suppress it. That only gives it more power. Instead, acknowledge it. Say to yourself, yes, I have doubt. This is natural. My senses are reporting current circumstances, but I know that circumstances are effects, not causes. I know that my assumption is the cause, and I choose to persist in my assumption despite what my senses tell me. Then return to the assumption. Return to the drowsy state. Return to the scene that implies the wish fulfilled. Do this not with strain, but with gentleness. Do it as you would return to a beloved melody. Not forcing it, but letting it come. Each time you return, the assumption deepens. Each time you return, it becomes more natural, and eventually the doubt will fade. Not because you have conquered it, but because you has nothing left to feed on. The new assumption will be so firmly established that the old doubts will wither like plants without water. Let me address something else that often troubles people. They hear this teaching and they think, if imagination creates reality, can I imagine harm to others? Can I use this law to manipulate people, to force them to do what I want? This is an important question, and I want to answer it clearly. You cannot use the law of assumption to violate another person's free will. You cannot force someone to love you. You cannot compel someone to do something against their nature. What you can do is change yourself in relation to others. And by changing yourself, you change how others appear and behave toward you. Let me explain. Remember the costume designer who was treated badly by the theatrical producer. She did not try to manipulate him. She did not imagine controlling his mind or bending him to her will. She simply changed her assumption about him. She assumed that he was kind and appreciative. She imagined conversations in which he praised her work. And by changing her assumption, she changed herself. She became someone who expected kindness. She became someone who was no longer projecting criticism and recrimination. And the producer, reflecting her new assumption, became kind. This is the key. Others are reflections of your assumptions about them. They are not independent agents acting arbitrarily upon you. They are mirrors showing you what you believe. If you believe people are hostile, you will encounter hostility. If you become people are generous, you will encounter generosity. Change your belief and the reflection must change. So if there is someone in your life who is not treating you as you wish to be treated, do not try to change them. Try to change your assumption about them. See them as you would have them be, not as they have been. Imagine conversations with them that reflect the relationship you desire. Fall asleep feeling the naturalness of being treated well by them and watch what happens. Not because you have manipulated them, but because you have changed the mirror, you have changed yourself. Now I want to speak about something that goes even deeper than anything I have said so far. I want to speak about who you really are. Because until you know who you are, you cannot use these laws to their fullest potential. You will be using them as a person trying to get things, rather than as the creator recognizing your own creations. You are not a human being having a spiritual experience. You are a spiritual being having a human experience. The body you wear, the name you answer to, the history you remember, these are costumes and props in a drama you are producing. The real you, the I am that is your true identity, is behind all experience. It is pure consciousness, unlimited, unbounded, eternal. It has been all things and will be all things. It is the creator of the world you perceive. When you say I am, you are speaking the name of God. Not a God out there, separate from you, sitting on a throne somewhere, beyond the stars. The God that is your own wonderful human imagination. The God that is the creative power behind all manifestation. The God that spoke the world into being and continues to speak it into being in every moment through the assumptions and feelings of every being who says I am. This is why the scripture says I am that I am. It is the only name that God ever gives for himself. Not I will be or I was or I hope to become. I am present tense eternal. Now when you say I am wealthy, you are not expressing a hope. You are creating a reality. When you say I am loved, you are not making an affirmation. You are speaking the truth of being into manifestation. Every I am statement is a creative act. Every I am statement shapes your world. This is why you must be so careful about what you attach to your I am. Most people go through life unconsciously declaring I am tired, I am broke, I am unlucky, I am unworthy. And with each declaration, they create the very circumstances they lament. But you who understand the law, you who know the creative power of I am, you must guard your tongue. You must refuse to attach anything to your I am that you do not wish to experience. And you must begin tonight to consciously declare what you choose to be. Let me share with you one more illustration of this principle, because I wanted to be absolutely clear before we conclude. There was a woman, a devoted wife and mother, who came to me with a problem that seemed unsolvable by any ordinary means. Her husband had become cold and distant. Their marriage, once warm and loving, had grown stale and lifeless. She had tried everything the world suggests. She had talked to him. She had suggested counseling. She had attempted to change herself to please him. Nothing worked. When she came to me, she was desperate. She felt that her marriage was dying and that there was nothing she could do to save it. I told her the same thing I have told you tonight. I explained that her husband's coldness was not the cause of her problem. It was the effect. The cause was her assumption about him, her expectation of coldness, her inner speech filled with worry and complaint and disappointment. I suggested that she begin immediately to change her inner conversations with him. Instead of lying awake at night worrying about the state of her marriage, she would imagine lying next to a loving, devoted husband. She would hear him whispering words of affection. She would feel his warmth beside her. She would assume the feeling of being deeply loved and cherished. And most importantly, she would do this in the drowsy state before sleep, when the subconscious was most receptive. She was skeptical at first. How could imagining change reality? How could pretending in her mind alter the behavior of a flesh and blood man? But she was desperate enough to try. And so she began. Night after night she fell, asleep in the assumption of a loving marriage. She heard her husband speaking tenderly to her. She felt the naturalness of being adored. She did not. She focused on the problems. She did not rehearse the grievances. She simply assumed that her marriage was everything she desired it to be. Within 3 weeks, something remarkable began to happen. Her husband, who had been distant and cold for months, began to soften. He started speaking to her more kindly. He surprised her with small gestures of affection. Within 2 months, he was more loving than he had been in years, and she had not said a single word to him about what she was doing. She had not demanded change. She had not pleaded or manipulated. She had simply changed her assumption. And her husband, like the people in our lives, had no choice but to reflect that change. This is not wishful thinking. This is not positive psychology or self-help optimism. This is the law. It operates with the same certainty as gravity. Drop a stone and it falls. Assume a state and it manifests. There are no exceptions. There are only variations in the time it takes for manifestation to occur. And these variations depend entirely on how naturally the assumption is held. Let me tell you about another aspect of this teaching that often goes overlooked. I call it the feeling of naturalness. Many people hear about the law of assumption, and they approach it with strain. They try hard to believe. They force themselves to imagine. They engage in what amounts to mental wrestling, trying to overpower their doubts with sheer willpower. This does not work not because the law is ineffective, but because strain implies that the thing is not natural, and what is natural cannot be impressed upon the subconscious. Think about the things you truly believe about yourself. You believe you have 2 hands. You believe you know how to walk. You believe you are a citizen of your country. These beliefs are so natural that never question them. You never have to convince yourself of them. They simply are. This is the kind of naturalness your assumptions must have. When you assume the wish fulfilled, you must feel it as natural, as unremarkable as having 2 hands, as obvious as knowing how to walk. This is why I emphasize the drowsy state and the repetition of scenes. The drowsy state bypasses the critical faculty of the conscious mind, which would otherwise resist the new assumption, and the repetition makes the assumption familiar. What is repeated becomes habitual. What is habitual becomes natural, and what is natural must express itself. So do not approach this teaching as a technique to be mastered or a discipline to be imposed. Approach it as a gentle practice of becoming comfortable with a new truth about yourself. Let the assumptions settle into you like water settling into the earth. Let it become part of you without effort. And when it has become natural, when you no longer have to try to believe it because you simply know it, it will manifest with the same inevitability as the sunrise. There is something else I want to address before we close. Many people, when they first encounter this teaching, worry about their past assumptions. They look back at all the negative thoughts they have had, all the fears they have entertained, all the doubts they have nourished, and they panic. They think they have doomed themselves with years of negative imagining. Let me put your mind at ease. Yes, your past assumptions have shaped your present circumstances, but the present moment is the only point of power. The past is dead. It has no life of its own. It only continues to influence you extent that you continue to hold the same assumptions you held in the past. The moment you change your assumptions, the past loses its power. You are released from its grip. This is why revision is such a powerful practice. When you revise the past, you are not merely changing your memories. You are withdrawing your consent from the old assumptions that created those memories. You are saying to the past, you no longer have power over me. I am rewriting you according to my present understanding. And the past being nothing but solidified assumptions must comply. Do not waste one moment in regret over past mistakes. To think feelingly of the mistakes of the past is to reinfect yourself. Let the dead bury the dead. As the scripture says, turn from what was and toward what shall be. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled in this present moment and let the past take care of itself. I want to leave you with one final thought about the nature of faith. Faith, as the world understands it, is belief in something unprovable. It is a leap into the dark hoping that something will catch you. But faith, as I understand it, is something quite different. Faith is the awareness of the reality of that which you assume. When you truly assume the wish fulfilled when you feel it as real, you are exercising faith, not faith in an external deity who may or may not answer your prayers. Faith in the law itself. Faith that consciousness creates reality. Faith that what you assume as real must come to pass. This faith is not blind. It is informed by understanding. You know the law. You have seen it work. Perhaps in your own life already, perhaps in the stories I have shared tonight. And knowing the law, you can exercise faith with confidence. You can assume the wish, fulfilled knowing that it must manifest. You can fall asleep in the feeling of having, knowing that you will wake to having. This is the faith that moves mountains. Not the faith that begs and hopes and wonders, if the faith that knows. The faith that assumes and rests. The faith that has already received before there is any visible evidence. Cultivate this faith. Nurture it with practice. Test it on small things until you see it work, and then extend it to larger things. There is no limit to what can be accomplished through faith rightly understood and correctly applied. The universe is waiting for you to claim your inheritance. It has been waiting since the foundation of the world. Everything you could ever want exists right now in the infinite mansion of consciousness. There are rooms you have never entered, states you have never occupied, realities you have never experienced, and they are all available to you through the simple act of assumption. You do not have to earn access to these rooms. You do not have to prove your worthiness. You do not have to struggle or suffer or sacrifice. You simply have to assume. And assuming you enter, and entering you experience. And experiencing you know beyond all doubt that imagination is the only reality, and that you, the imaginer, are God in human form. This is the truth that sets you free. Not free from circumstances, though, that comes in time, but free from the belief that you are a victim. Free from the illusion that you are at the mercy of forces beyond your control. Free to create consciously, deliberately, joyfully. Free to be what you want to be, to have what you want to have, to experience you want to experience. I am healthy. I am prosperous. I am deeply loved. I am the creator of my reality. I am one with the Father. I am that I am. Say these things not as affirmations to be believed later, but as declarations of present fact. Say them with the feeling of their truth, and they will become your experience. Let me bring this to a close. Now, though I could speak for many more hours on these truths that have been the passion of my life, let me summarize what I have shared with you tonight. First, the world has taught you to earn your good through effort. But effort is a confession of lack. The law of assumption works by acceptance, not coercion. Second, creation is finished. Everything you could ever desire already exists in a state waiting for you. You do not create, and selection requires only attention and feeling. Third, the drowsy state between waking and sleeping is the open door to the subconscious. Whatever you assume and feel in this state will be externalized in your waking life. Fourth, your inner speech. The mental conversations you carry on with yourself is constantly creating your tomorrow. Change your inner speech and you change your life. Fifth, your past is not fixed. Through the technique of revision, you can rewrite any memory and release its hold on your present and future. Sixth, persistence, not intensity, is the key to effective assumption. Return again and again to the state of the wish fulfilled, and it will harden into fact. Seventh, you are not a limited human being trying to get things from an indifferent universe. You are the I Am, the creative power itself, temporarily wearing a mask of limitation. Awaken to who you really are, and all things become possible. Tonight, when you close your eyes, remember these truths. Lie down in your bed and let your body relax. Enter the drowsy state. Bring to mind a simple scene that implies your wish fulfilled. Be in it. Feel it. Let it loop gently in your imagination until it feels more real than the room around you. Then release it and drift into sleep with the feeling still alive in you. And tomorrow when you wake, do not look immediately for evidence. Do not test the law with doubt. Simply live from the assumption. Carry it with you through the day. Let your inner speech match your fulfilled desire. Revise any moment that does not conform to your ideal. And at night, return again to the drowsy state and reinforce your assumption. Do this day after day. Do it until the assumption becomes natural, until it feels like the most obvious truth in the world. And then watch as circumstances begin to shift. Watch as opportunities appear. Watch as people behave differently toward you. Watch as the outer world slowly but inevitably conforms to your inner assumption. This is the lazy way. But it is not easy laziness. It is the laziness of trust, the laziness of faith, the laziness of a child who asks its father for bread and falls asleep, knowing that the bread will be there in the morning. It requires letting go of everything you have been taught about how life works. It requires trusting in something you cannot see. It requires assuming before you have evidence. But if you do this, if you are willing to take this leap, you will discover something that will change your life forever. You will discover that you are not at the mercy of circumstances. You will discover that you are not a victim of fate. You will discover that you are the creator of your experience, the author of your story, the God of your universe wearing a human face. And then you will understand why I call this the lazy way to get everything you want. Because once you know who you are you know the creative power of assumption. Once you know that creation is finished, and you are only selecting, all sense of struggle dissolves. You simply assume. You feel and you receive. This is your birthright. This is your inheritance. This is the kingdom of heaven that's always been within you, waiting for you to claim it. So claim it tonight. Press play on the life you desire. Fall asleep in the wish, trust the Father within to bring it to pass. You are not broken. You have never been broken. You are infinite consciousness playing a game of limitation, and now you know the rules of the game. Now you know how to win. If this has touched you, if something in your heart resonates with what I have shared, let me know. Leave a comment. Share your experiences. Tell others who are still struggling, still striving, still wondering why life seems so hard. Let them know there is a better way. And if you want to continue this journey with me, subscribe. There is so much more to explore. The depths of this teaching are truly infinite. But for tonight, you have enough, more than enough. Go now to your rest. Go with the blessing of the I am that you are. Go knowing that your desire is already fulfilled in the only place that matters, in the consciousness that creates all things. Good night, my friend. Sleep well and wake to a new world of your own assumption. It is done. It always was. And so it is. And remember this, my dear friend, as you drift towards sleep. Tonight, the universe does not ask you to be perfect. It does not require that you never have a doubt or never feel a fear. It only asks that you return. Return to the assumption. Return to the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Return again and again, as many times as necessary, with patience and with love for yourself. You are learning. You are growing. You are awakening. And every step you take on this path brings you closer to the full realization of who you are and what you are capable of creating. Be gentle with yourself. Be persistent and trust the process. The Father within you never sleeps. Even now, as you prepare for rest, He is at work bringing your assumptions to pass. Let Him work. Let yourself rest and wake tomorrow to a new day, a new opportunity, a new creation. You have everything you need. You always have. Thank you.